since that seems to be our topic. How? Did you know that a few years ago, a number of para adumot, red heifers, were transported from Chutz La'aretz into Eretz Yisrael? These red heifers were transported into the land of Israel by the Temple Institute, by the people. These red heifers are very, very important. Why? First of all, the birth of so many is incredible. And the fact that they were found perfectly Adom. When you say a red heifer, a red cow, it has to be absolutely red. Not even two black hairs can be found together on this animal. A whole bunch were found in Chutz La'aretz, some were found in America. They were transported to the land of Israel. Why is this so important? So the parasha, Chokat, speaks about this chok, this statue, this mitzvah that we don't have a rational explanation for, but we do know what the mitzvah does. What is the mitzvah? You take a red cow, a perfectly red cow that is unblemished, that has not worked a day in its life, it's not lifted a yoke and plowed or done anything else, or allowed someone to ride on it. It is taken to Eretz Yisrael, outside Yerushalayim. It is killed. It is burned together with a vast amount of wood, and a lot of water is added to it as well. The ashes, with this vast amount of wood that's added to it, becomes a remedy to help people to become tahor. It is sprinkled on a person, and it allows them to go into the Beit HaMikdash, to be involved in the various korbanot, allows them to do various mitzvot, to enter into the... We no longer have a red heifer ceremony, but it must return before Mashiach's arrival, because we are going to go en masse into a mikvah and then straight up to Har HaBayit in order to partake of this tremendous third and final Bet HaMikdash. There's something very unusual about the mitzvah that makes it into a chok, into a statute that has no rational explanation. It has a supernatural understanding, which is the following. The ashes of this cow purify a person so they're able to do their avodah in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple. But the people who prepare this mixture of red heifer ashes are pure, but become impure through the preparation and maybe even the sprinkling. The people who are impure become pure by receiving the sprinkling of the ashes. Some say it's that aspect that makes it into a chok, into a statute. Why would it be that people who are pure become impure by making the ashes, and the people who are impure become pure? It's a very difficult idea to understand. Even King Solomon did not understand this, and he said in Kohelet, we already mentioned Kohelet, I said I would be wise, a chacham, but zerachok mimeni, it's very far from me. What was he talking about? This mitzvah. He didn't understand this dual, contradictory nature of this mitzvah of the para adumah, of the red heifer. Those who are impure become pure, and those who become pure become impure. He couldn't understand it. Now, when I was a kid, my Rebbe said, well, maybe it's like medication. If a person needs a medication, it makes them better. But if someone does not need a medication, the same medication that makes someone better, if they're sick, makes that person who's pure, who is well, sick. So it may not be such an unusual idea, but Shlomo Melech was still perplexed by it. Okay, it's a statute, we do not know the reason. But we do know something fascinating. And that is, the Midrash tells us that this idea of pure becoming impure and pure coming from impure actually has a precedent when it comes to people. People who are pure, who are tahor, great people in history, have come from the worst sources of people. For example, we know that some of the greatest heroes in Jewish history, for example, we know that Avraham Avinu was great. And his father was not initially a great man. He was Oved, Avodah Zarah. He was an idol worshiper. Okay, he did teshuvah, and he changed his life. But Avraham Avinu was born into a family. The greatest redeemer, the Mashiach of his day, was born into a family that were Oved, Avodah Zarah, Terach. Hezekiah, Chizkiyahu, Hamelach, came from Achaz, a terrible, terrible man who brought Avodah Zarah and murder into the land of Israel. So we see one of the greatest kings came from absolute impurity. Yoshia came from Ammon. Ammon was not a good man, a terrible, terrible person. And yet, he became a great individual in and of himself. And again, and again, and again, Rivka came from impurity as well, right? But well, we see all these great people who come from the worst stock. It's very unusual. It's very, very hard for us to understand how some of the greatest people come from impurity. So they say this is the para aduma effect. You see, the people are impure, and from them comes purity. Just like the person who receives the ashes, he becomes pure, but he comes from impurity because the person who is preparing the ashes is impure. From this, the rabbis tell us something unbelievable. And that is, who's going to be the greatest king in world history? That's going to have to be Mashiach. Now, we're all expecting Mashiach to come from the greatest legacy, from the greatest rabbinic family in world history. We're waiting for him to come, and his father's a great Talmid Chacham, and his grandfather, great-grandfather. The Rabbanim tell us, you're missing the whole point. This Mashiach, who's going to come and purify the world with his leadership and his great actions, could well be coming from the worst stock. He could well be coming from a family who actually are not great people at all. So everyone's looking for the Gadol Hador, waiting for him to flip and become Mashiach. But actually the Paraduma effect may well be an effect, and any given Mashiach could come from the last place. By the way, this is not so unusual. We know that David HaMelech was the 8th son of Yishai. Now Yishai was a great man, but no one suspected the 8th son of Yishai to be the king, the future king, and the beginning of the ancestry of Mashiach. When Shmuel turned up at Yishai's house and said, okay, we need to find a king of Israel. Who's in the house? He listed his 7 sons and brought them all out. And Shmuel said, no. It's none of these people. Is there anybody else? And Yishai said, no, that's it. He goes, you have no other sons? And he said, I have an 8th son, but forget about him. He's out in the field. He's a wild guy. He's a redhead. You're not going to be interested in him. And he said, bring him to me. I'm telling you, he's not his own father. Yishai said, there's no way. He didn't even bring him forward as a candidate, right? In order to be the Mashiach. And he brought him forward, and Shmuel said, this is him. The last person you would have thought that even his own father didn't even consider him to be the great Mashiach of his day. And the great-great-great-grandfather of the Alta Mashiach didn't even see it coming. Ruth. She was a convert. She was a Moaviah. She came from Moabite stock. She was put aside. Husband died. She managed to make her way back into Israel. And she ends up converting, marrying Boaz, having a child who has another child, and ends up being that David HaMelech comes out of Ruth. It's unbelievable. Yehudah and Tamar. Look in the Torah, right? That illicit relationship that they had ended up creating generations. Lot with his daughter. If you look, you see that the entire route of Mashiach is very unorthodox. It's very murky. There's no clear rabbinic line. You've got a convert mixed up in there. You have Yud and Tamar. You have Lot with his daughter. The whole thing is so mubulbal. It's so weird. It's so mixed up. And all of this is going to lead to the eventual birth of Mashiach. Don't be confused, my dear friends. This is precisely how it's meant to be. This is the para aduma effect. The Kabbalists go a little bit further and they say that all of this is really coming along to distract the Satan, right? So they can't block the birth of Mashiach, because Mashiach is going to come to a place that even the Satan would never have imagined. It's not just fooling us. It's tricking the Satan as well, in order not to stop the lineage of Mashiach coming. As my rabbi used to say, it's throwing a bone to the Satan, so he won't prevent the birth of Mashiach in order to come and save us. So whenever we're looking somewhere, we're always looking for great people coming from great people. But sometimes the greatest people come from the most illegitimate stock, and they become the future of the Jewish people. Have a great day.